And right now, you take a look at our bracket. And again, if you're listening on audio, just continue to listen to me. I'm going to take you through the whole bracket. If you are watching on video, you should be seeing our bracket screen right now. As always, go to youtube.com/Brandon's World to check out all of the Brandon's World clips from our individual podcasts on our YouTube channel. Without further ado, let's take a look at the West bracket. The first round, we got Gonzaga right over Georgia State. We did pick Memphis correctly in an upset over Boise State. Now, the one we got wrong here, New Mexico State upset UConn. We had UConn, and unfortunately, we had them going to the Sweet 16 and facing Gonzaga. We did nail Arkansas defeating Vermont. We had Arkansas then in the next round. We had them defeating UConn. So we had Gonzaga against UConn in the Sweet 16 and ended up being Gonzaga and Arkansas. Not terrible. Moving down here, we did have Alabama defeat Notre Dame. Notre Dame, the 11th seed, upset the 6th seed Alabama. We did have Texas Tech moving on. We also did have Texas Tech moving on in this round. So we do have, looks like Texas Tech. We had Texas Tech taking on Michigan State instead of Duke. Now, Duke obviously did defeat Michigan State. We did have Michigan State defeating Duke. We had that matchup right, but we had Michigan State defeating Duke. Again, Duke won that game. So instead of Texas Tech versus Michigan State, it's Texas Tech versus Duke. And again, instead of Gonzaga versus UConn, it's Gonzaga versus Arkansas. So we got two of those teams right. Our Elite Eight in the West bracket is still alive here with Gonzaga and Texas Tech. Now, moving on to the East bracket. We did nail this pretty much all correct. This is our best bracket, I would say. We had Baylor defeating Norfolk State. We had North Carolina defeating Marquette. And we had North Carolina upsetting Baylor. I told you guys from the start that Baylor was a bunch of frauds. We had North Carolina moving on to the Sweet 16. Then we had St. Mary's defeating Indiana. We had UCLA defeating Akron, though they did so barely. Then we had UCLA defeating St. Mary's, and we had North Carolina and UCLA matching up. However, here's the problem that we were struck. In the Elite Eight, we had North Carolina going up against Kentucky, and we all know what happened. Kentucky obviously losing to St. Peter's, who is this year's Cinderella team. St. Peter's, the number 15 seed, obviously upsetting Kentucky, which was unfortunate. The good news for us, though, is we did have Purdue defeating Yale. We did have Murray State defeating San Francisco. Now, unfortunately, we did get wrong Virginia Tech over Texas. We had Texas. So instead of Purdue, Virginia Tech, we have Purdue, Texas here. We picked Purdue. We had Purdue against Kentucky. Unfortunately, again, at St. Peter's, we had Kentucky moving on. So we're going to get that all wrong because as you guys can see here, we had Kentucky as our national champion taking on Kansas. Now, as you guys can see by the bracket, the good news for us is 3 out of our 4 Final Four teams are still alive. Let's move on then to the South bracket, where we had Arizona. Now, we had them facing off against Seton Hall. They did not. It was actually Arizona against TCU. Arizona won that game. Now, we did correctly predict that Arizona would face Houston in the Sweet 16. Houston obviously defeating UAB and then defeating Illinois, who we got that matchup right. So that was good. In one of the shockers here, we had Colgate defeating Michigan. Michigan obviously pulling the upset over Colgate. Now, we had Tennessee defeating Longwood. We had Tennessee defeating Colorado State. We had Tennessee facing Arizona in the Elite Eight. Now, that is not going to happen. You take a look here, we had Villanova going up against Tennessee. Instead, it's going to be Villanova going up against Michigan. And so that has no chance. So really, we nailed Gonzaga, Texas Tech. We nailed Arizona here. Obviously, Tennessee is on the out and out. And then going into the Midwest here, we had San Diego State defeating Creighton. Creighton pulled the upset, but we did have Kansas moving on. Kansas and Providence in the Sweet 16. is going to match up. Now, we had Iowa, unfortunately. Iowa got bounced in the first round by Richmond. We had Iowa going to the Sweet 16. And in the Elite Eight, we had Kansas going up against Wisconsin, and Wisconsin got knocked out in the second round by Iowa State. Again, we had Wisconsin going all the way to the Elite Eight. Our South Division got killed because we had Auburn even going to the Sweet 16 and getting knocked out by Wisconsin. Auburn obviously got eliminated by Miami, though we did have Miami taking on Auburn, but we picked Auburn to win that matchup. We had it going to be Auburn against Wisconsin. Instead, it's going to be Miami against Iowa State. So ESPN says we have a 70% good bracket. I mean, that's not bad. I think our South was our worst region. I think the East was our best region, and the West and the Midwest were somewhere in between, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, overall, 3 out of our 4 teams are still alive for the Final Four. That being Gonzaga, Arizona, and Kansas. Those are 3 number 1 seeds. I said 1 number 1 seed was going to be knocked out early. That number 1 seed being Baylor. Now, I was not surprised that Auburn was knocked out as early as they are. I thought that they were potential frauds. I was surprised, obviously, that Kentucky got knocked out in the first round by St. Peter's. As you can see, we had Kentucky winning 73-71 in the national championship over Kansas. So unfortunately, our national champion is knocked out, but at least the silver lining is, again, 3 out of our 4 Final Four teams are still alive in this tournament. I will let you know. I believe it will be next Tuesday when we will go back and we will look at the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight, and we will see if 3 out of these Final Four teams still remain. I've talked about Gonzaga a lot. Again, I did not like them to lose to Memphis, but I thought Memphis would give them a hell of a game. I feel the same thing about Arkansas, even though I picked UConn to defeat Arkansas. I thought that was going to be a really close game. I think Gonzaga potentially has a real rough road. Texas Tech is going to be another close game. So all of these games, I think Gonzaga has the toughest road to get to the Final Four. In my opinion, I think Arizona on certain nights is still the best team in college basketball, but I would also look out for Kansas. I think Kansas is the safest lock out of all 4 of our teams to get to the Final Four, and I'm expecting at least half of our Final Four, maybe even one side of the bracket, Arizona and Kansas potentially to be there at the end of the tournament. But I hope you guys enjoyed March Madness this weekend. Just some phenomenal games, and it creates urgency because, as we all know, when you have one superstar on your team and they struggle for one game, it could create problems. And that's what happened this weekend. Auburn, one bad game, boom, they are bounced out of the tournament.